Hey everybody. So this video is going along with the revising and editing lesson in the week 6 module. So hopefully you have already looked at the other subtabs, the previous subtabs in this lesson. The first one was the PowerPoint on revising and editing, and then the second subtab was the video lesson that covered that PowerPoint. This subtab contains this video lesson, and then right below this video, you're going to see an essay. Actually, there's a few questions listed before the essay begins, but the essay is called Analysis of a Poor Paper. I'm actually going to read this essay. I don't normally do that, but I want to read through it, and then we're going to come back to those questions. There is a good reason why we're doing this, so just bear with me as I read through it. It's not that long. So, Analysis of a Poor Paper. When I was a kid, I can remember riding my bike everywhere in the neighborhood. I liked to go through the side roads and take turns in hills at high speeds. When I would go out and ride my bike, I would be gone for hours and hours. My parents knew that I was safe because we knew many of the neighbors. They knew that if I needed anything, I could go to the neighbors and get help or something to drink. As I was riding my bike, I used to go down by the river and stop for a while. I always liked to watch the water. The fish were always really cool to watch because they would do different things in the water. I could see many different colored fish and rocks in the water. The water would make cool waves over the rocks and the brush that was in the water. I liked to watch the fish move around, under and around things that were obstructing their path in the water. All of my friends could ride with no hands, but I could not for the longest time. I was getting frustrated at myself because I couldn't seem to find the balance to ride with no hands. All of my friends thought that if you could ride your bike with no hands, you were pretty cool. So being able to not ride no hands, I did not feel as cool as my friends. When we would ride our bikes, we had to be careful because there were some dogs in the neighborhood that would chase us. I remember one time I was riding down this one street and there was a dog in the front yard. As soon as we passed the driveway, the dog ran out and attacked my friend. She had bite marks on her legs and arms. I felt bad because I was riding on the opposite side of her and I felt I should have been the one who should have been bit. There was another time that a neighbor's Cocker Spaniel ran out in front of me and I ran over it with my bike. He was okay, but I was scared that I might have actually hurt him. I liked to ride fast and with no hands, but I did not think when I was riding into the driveway. I was so excited to ride no hands that one day I did not see a pothole in the road. I fell down and sprained my ankle and almost broke my wrist. However, I was in pain for a long time. But I got right back on my bike and continued to ride. One day, I came too fast into the driveway and my brakes would not work. I slammed into the garage door and bent the front wheel of my bike. However, I learned a lesson from all of this. I needed to slow down and pay attention to what was in the road. I also learned that I should only ride no hands when I'm on flat parts of the road and not hills or turns. Okay, so the questions right before the essay all have to do with the revision process. Normally, you would start with the level 1 revision issues, the global issues, right? Looking at the rhetorical situation, and work your way through the levels until you got to the last level on proofreading, level 4. That's definitely the order you want to typically go in for your revision process. But because I want to prove a point here, we're going to go through it backwards. So we're going to look first at level 4, proofreading. So remember, this level, it not only involves like spelling and punctuation and grammar errors, it also includes other sentence level issues you want to look at. Do you have too many short, choppy sentences, or do you need to work on combining sentences? Everything in that eliminating ineffective writing lesson. Do you have a lot of wordiness? Do you have useless repetition? Are you using cliches or too many clutter words? Have you used words or phrases or expressions that are too informal for a college level essay? Right? So all at a sentence level though. Do we find any of those errors as we read through this essay? Absolutely. You go right up to the very first paragraph and we have a problem with using a homonym. And remember, homonyms are the words that sound the same, but they are spelled differently and they mean different things. In this case, it's the word new. So in the second to last sentence of that first paragraph, he gets it right. We knew many of the neighbors, K-N-E-W. But then right after that, at the beginning of the next sentence, he gets it wrong. They knew that if I needed anything, and then he spells it N-E-W. That's the wrong version. In the second paragraph, the fish were always really cool to watch. That's not appropriate for a college level essay. That's too informal, too conversational. Yes, when you're telling a story, like when you're writing a narrative, you have a little more freedom with the style of your writing and the voice that you're using. But even still, I'm sure there's a much better way that we could phrase this, that we could express that idea instead of just really cool. And then right after that, really cool to watch cause they would do different things in the water. We're lapsing into the problem here of writing how we speak. And we all know that it's because, not just cause. And if I see a C-U-Z, I'm going to be really upset, but we're not texting. This is college level writing. We've got a few other issues here throughout the essays, some of those smaller sentence level issues. We've got the next paragraph where he talks about writing with no hands, that very last sentence in that paragraph. So being able to not ride no hands, I did not feel as cool as my friends. It's so wordy and so awkward. There's like 3 negatives right in a row in that sentence. So it's very difficult to get through. At the end of the day, we understand what he's trying to say, but it trips me up every time I go to read it. Oh, actually going back up to that previous paragraph about the fish in the water. Water, oh my goodness. We have some useless repetition up in that paragraph. It is difficult to read. Try reading it out loud. It might not be as difficult to read it to yourself, but try reading that paragraph out loud. You will get so tired of saying the word water that you won't want to keep reading anymore. And that's the point with trying to eliminate that ineffective writing in our essays is if you have too much ineffective writing, your reader will just stop. They won't even want to keep going. And that paragraph does it for me. Second paragraph in the whole essay, and I'm ready to walk away. Just because of that one word, but it's repeated so many times, it's overwhelming and annoying. So keep that in mind as well. That useless repetition, that lesson within the ineffective writing material, it's really important. All right, so we got the repetition, really cool, cause instead of because, the really awkward sentence at the end of the third paragraph. Let's see here. I think we have a couple other little punctuation errors. Maybe I think not having an apostrophe where it's supposed to be. We have a run-on, a comma splice in the final paragraph. I fell down and sprained my ankle and almost broke my wrist, comma. However, I was in pain for a long time, through the comma splice. So there are definitely quite a few level 4 issues that we could revise at this point. But should we? The answer is no. Yes, we see them. We know they're there. We might even feel the urge to go in and make the corrections, but don't yet. Don't waste your time on those smaller issues, because you have to make sure that all the other bigger issues are taken care of first. If I'm going in and making all these revisions on these little areas, and then I go and realize that nothing in that paragraph should even be there, I'm going to be mad because I just wasted time going through and making all of those small corrections, and I'm not even keeping it. So they are there. We are aware of them. We're going to come back to them later. We're going to go up to the next level instead, level 3. So this is the substantive editing. I'm sorry, copy editing. So the copy editing, remember, is all about paragraphs. So level 3, paragraphs. We have learned about paragraph development now. So what we want to focus on is first, is each paragraph focused? One idea per paragraph, right? If that's true, if that's okay, we have one idea per paragraph, then we need to look to make sure that the paragraph is coherent, that the train of thought, all the idea, all the sentences, all of the thoughts that we put in the paragraph, they all belong there. They are all focused on one bigger idea. But are they in the right order? Have we connected them in the right way? Does the paragraph flow smoothly from beginning to end? The one that I can point out right now is that last paragraph. He starts talking about writing with no hands and writing into the driveway. And then all of a sudden, he starts talking about writing in the road and hitting a pothole. He comes back a little later to talking about writing into the driveway and having an accident there. So it seems like the paragraph is about accidents that he's had while riding his bike. So it seems okay focus-wise for the most part, but it's not in the right order. There is no cohesion there whatsoever. So making sure that we have focus, making sure it's cohesive and that all the thoughts are linked together. Are they concise? Do we have any kind of wordiness? Have we included too much information, right? And then looking at the topic sentences, and along with the topic sentences, the transitions from one paragraph to the next. So let's take a look up. We won't look at the very first paragraph since that's usually the introductory paragraph, but the second paragraph. As I was riding my bike, I used to go down by the river and stop for a while. Okay, that might be a decent topic sentence. I'm not sure about a transition though. Yes, this is the first body paragraph, but I still feel like we're just abruptly going from this idea of, his parents knowing that if he needed anything, he could go to the neighbors and get help, to boom, suddenly we're riding our bike and going down by the river. There's nothing that eases us into the story or into this first main point. I'm assuming it's a narrative essay, but what if it's not? What if it's some other kind of essay? So we need some sort of transition, even though it's the first main point or the beginning of the story. There should still be something that eases us into the body of the essay from the introduction. So we need to work on that. Let's see if it's a good topic sentence. The topic sentence says we're basically going to tell us about going down by the river on his bike and stopping for a while. The rest of the paragraph kind of has to do with being by the river, but the focus actually seems to be on the fish and the water. So I think that the topic sentence could use a little work. It's not quite as focused as it should be based on what is in the rest of the paragraph. All my friends could ride with no hands, but I could not for the longest time. The rest of the paragraph is definitely about not being able to ride no hands. Did I just do it myself with the triple negatives? But there's no transition that gets us from the paragraph about being by the river and watching the fish to this new paragraph on writing with no hands. It's so choppy. It's so abrupt. Like, how in the world did we just get from being by the river to writing with no hands and comparing ourselves to our friends? I don't know. But it seems to be okay focused. It's a very short paragraph. Everything in it is about whether or not he can ride with no hands. The next paragraph, when we would ride our bikes, we had to be careful because there were some dogs in the neighborhood that would chase us. Okay, the rest of that paragraph is about the dogs in the neighborhood. He doesn't really talk about them chasing us or chasing him and his friend. So I don't know if we need that part. That doesn't seem quite as accurate as it should be. And it's so general there that, there were some dogs in the neighborhood that would chase us. It just sounds so informal and so vague. I would just change it to, when we would ride our bikes, we had to be careful and watch out for the dogs in the neighborhood, and then you're kind of covering your bases there without getting too wordy. The problem with that topic sentence, though, is, again, no transition from that links it to the previous paragraph. How did we get from talking about writing with no hands to talking about the dogs in the neighborhood? I don't know. That paragraph has some issues. It seems to be somewhat focused, you know, it's all about the dog, so that's okay. That second sentence, though, I remember one time I was riding down this one street and there was a dog in the front yard. First of all, what was the one time? Don't phrase it like that. That's so vague and general. I was riding down this one street. Even if you don't remember the name of it, make it up. And there was a dog in the front yard. Now we're being specific. Whose front yard? Which front yard? The front yard. Like there's only one yard and it's that one. You know, the dog was in the front yard. So that could use some work. The rest of the paragraph is about the dogs. I don't like how he ends it though. He was okay, but I was scared that I might have actually hurt him. Well, how are we? Okay. And then we just jump right into, I liked to ride fast with no hands. But that paragraph up there about the dog, what was the point of that? Round out that paragraph for me. Give me a point sentence. And then we get to this last paragraph. I like to ride fast with no hands, but I did not think when I was riding into the driveway. Again, no transition from the previous paragraph. How did we get to this place? Don't know. Topic sentence makes it sound like this paragraph is only going to be about the time he rode into the driveway. But it's not. There's another incident that gets talked about first. So he needs to definitely clean up that topic sentence, and he needs to connect the first experience of hitting the pothole to the second experience of running into the garage door. How are those two moments connected? What's the point? So there are definitely some level 3 issues that we need to work on. The copy editing will be intense at this point. The paragraphs need some work. Are we going to work on them yet? No. Because we need to make sure that everything at the level 2 area is taken care of. So level 2 is substantive editing. This is where we're looking at content and organization. So before we start messing with these paragraphs, let's make sure that the content for the essay is appropriate. You know, why am I going to work on a paragraph if I then get to level 2 and realize, oh, I don't even need that paragraph. It doesn't even belong in this essay. And I just wasted all that time working on the coherence and working on my topic sentence and adding transitions, and I'm just going to get rid of it because it didn't need to be there in the first place. So looking at the information that's within the body of the essay. So if it's a traditional essay, the content we're talking about here, your main points and your supporting evidence. For a narrative essay, we're talking about the story. Have you included all of the important elements of the story? Have you made sure to get rid of anything that does not add to the story or add to your purpose? Do you need to add anything to the story? Did you leave something out that would help us understand it better? Right? The content. And then the organization of the whole essay. Have you arranged the body paragraphs in the best way possible? Again, if it's a traditional essay, are you going from your strongest main point to your weakest or vice versa? Are you using cause and effect setups within the body of the essay? For your story, is the timeline correct? Does the timeline make sense? And do your paragraphs show the timeline? Or do we get lost because you haven't given us those transitions and linked it all together? That's what level 2 is all about. And in this case, I want to focus on content first because it leads us to level 1. So thinking about the content of this particular essay, we have a body paragraph on being down by the river and watching the fish. We have a body paragraph on his friends being able to ride with no hands, but he still isn't able to. Then a paragraph on the run-ins with the dogs in the neighborhood while they're riding their bikes. And then a paragraph on suddenly being able to ride with no hands. He's been able to figure it out. And 2 accidents that have happened. Okay. Does all of that information belong in this essay? Do we need every single one of those moments? Do we need the stuff on the water and the fish? Do we need the part about riding no hands or not being able to? Do we need the part on the dogs? Do we need the part on the 2 accidents? Well, The only way we can figure out if all of that information needs to stay is if we know why we're writing the essay. What was the author's purpose? What was their point? What are they trying to accomplish with this essay? And then we can figure out what needs to stay and what needs to go, or if anything needs to be added. So thinking about the content leads us to level 1, the global issues, the rhetorical situation. The topic, the focused topic of your essay. The topic is not the title, so it's bigger than that. The topic is not, memories of riding my bike as a kid. No. What is your focused topic? Memories of riding my bike as a kid is your idea, right? What is your topic? What is the story that you are about to tell? Literally, what is the story? Am I telling a story about my favorite memories of riding a bike as a kid? 4 different moments, 4 vivid memories of my favorite times riding a bike as a kid. Okay, that's more specific. That's a topic. Your angle, we'll come back to the angle. How do you make it fresh and unique? Because the biggest problem with this right now is the purpose. I have no idea why this essay has been written. I want to look at the last paragraph first. Actually, so we get into this last paragraph about the 2 accidents that he had while riding his bike with no hands, pothole and running into the garage door. After he talks about that, he says, however, I learned a lesson from all of this. When I got to that sentence, I was like, oh, okay, yay. Now I'm finally going to figure out what the point was of all of this. I needed to slow down and pay attention to what was in the road. I also learned that I should only ride with no hands when I'm on flat parts of the road and not hills or turns. Oh, well, I guess the lesson he's talking about is really only for this part of the essay, these accidents, the safety issue. I was hoping that he was getting around to an overall lesson that all of the essay related to, but that's not the case. But it makes me wonder, is that what you really wanted to do and you just didn't get to it until the end? Were you thinking about all these memories of riding your bike as a kid and you just started writing them down? And then you get to this part about the 2 accidents and then it hits you? Oh, that's really what I want to write about, are the lessons I learned while I was riding my bike as a kid. Oh, well, maybe. I don't know. Is it just a lesson on these little accidents, or is that really what he wanted the whole thing to be about? Unfortunately, I cannot answer that question. Only the author could answer that question, but it is definitely a question worth asking, because then we don't even have a conclusion. If that little part it's not a good conclusion either way, because that last paragraph is about the accidents, and you can't introduce new information or have this idea in your last paragraph. The conclusion needs to be the conclusion. But he started to get into what I felt could have been a conclusion that just needed to be broke off and developed more. You had this second to last paragraph then on the accidents, and then taking this part about learning a lesson and developing that more fully into a concluding paragraph. But I don't know if that would work, because I don't know if the whole essay was about learning a lesson or not. So let's go back up to the first paragraph and see if we can figure it out. Was there anything in the opening paragraph that would clue us in to what this guy's purpose was? What was his whole point for writing this essay? When I was a kid, I remember riding my bike everywhere in the neighborhood, blah, 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 blah. I would be gone for hours and hours. My parents knew that I was safe because we knew many of the neighbors. They knew that if I needed anything, I could go to the neighbors and get help or something to drink. That seems too specific. That part about needing something to drink probably just needs to go. They knew that if I needed anything, I could go to the neighbors to get help. Period. That opening paragraph made me think from the very beginning that the rest of the essay was going to be a story about a time when he needed help. That's how he sets it up. Those are that's the expectation he puts on me, is that he is about to tell me a story, maybe a very dangerous or harrowing or terrifying moment, where as a kid riding his bike out in the neighborhood, he ended up needing help. Something bad happened. But that's not what the rest of the essay entails. We know what the rest of the essay entails now. It has nothing to do with going to the neighbors for help. So no, I don't know. I don't know if this opening paragraph helps me at all in trying to figure out what this author's main point was. What was his purpose? Why is he telling me about all this? What does he want me to get out of it? I don't know. I don't find anything in the opening that really helps me. I thought that I knew, but then I started reading the body of the essay, and it turns out, no, it's not about needing help from the neighbors. So what is it about? I just keep reading, and I get to that last paragraph, which I think is the conclusion, but it's not a good conclusion because he introduced new information about the accidents. But then he does get to this point in the last paragraph where he talks about learning a lesson. And I'm like, oh, maybe that is what this is all about, learning a lesson. But then the lesson only applies to those 2 accidents that he talked about. I don't know. So this essay is so problematic at the first level of global revision items that I have to just tell the student, you need to go back to the drawing board. Now, I'm not saying crumple this up and throw it away or go into your computer and delete it. I'm not saying that at all. There might be parts of this that you will include in the next version of the essay. But it is super problematic right now. The first thing this student has to do is figure out the rhetorical situation for this essay. What is their focused topic? Skip the angle for a minute. What is their purpose? Topic and purpose are so crucial. What is the point? What are you trying to convey to us? What do you want us to walk away with? Why should we even care about reading this essay? And then go back to the angle. All right, you have your topic and your purpose set. How are you going to make it new and interesting? What are you going to add to it, right? How are you going to make it seem different than all the other essays that have been written about riding bikes as a kid? Who's your audience, and what kind of voice and tone are going to be appropriate? But that's why when we went over the rhetorical situation in week 2, I said, there's 5 elements of the rhetorical situation, but the first 3 are of the utmost importance: topic, angle, and purpose. If you have not nailed down those 3 elements, the paper falls apart every time. You guys are going to be getting feedback from me for your rough drafts. You probably should have by now. I hope that you take my feedback seriously, and that you use it to help you. And this goes for the second essay too that you guys will work on. But if I have mentioned you need to clarify your purpose, and then you need to go back once you have it figured out, then you go back. Okay, do I need this section on being by the river and watching the fish? Does that have anything to do with my point, with my purpose, what I'm trying to, convey to my readers? If it doesn't, then maybe it just needs to go. Take it out. What about this section on riding my bike with no hands? What about this section on the dogs? What about this section on the 2 accidents? You cannot answer those questions and figure out what needs to stay, what needs to go, or what needs to be added in terms of the content from level 3. You cannot answer any of those questions or do anything about it until you know for sure why you're writing the paper in the first place. What is your purpose? And then the rest will start to fall in place. Use the pre-writing techniques. Even if you didn't use them at the beginning when you started working on a rough draft, That doesn't mean you can't go back and use them at a later point in the writing process. They're always there to use. There's no rules. I've given you graphic organizers, and you'll have a graphic organizer for the second essay as well, even if you forgot to use them for your rough draft. That doesn't mean you can't go back and use them when you're revising. Use everything at your disposal at any point in the writing process to help you make it better. It's so important. But I hope that going through this essay, as painful as it is, kind of shows you, though, the importance of going through the 4 levels of revision in the correct order. We would have wasted so much time, so much effort working on those smaller problems when it would not have made the essay any better. You could have spent an hour going through and making proofreading corrections, thinking, okay, this is going to do it. This is going to take me from a D to a C, or this is going to take me from a C to a B, and it won't. It won't. If your rhetorical situation is faulty, if the foundation of the essay is faulty, it doesn't matter how many small corrections you make, right? Think of a house. If the foundation of the house is faulty, it doesn't matter how pretty the shutters are on the windows. It's all going to fall apart, right? So please just remember this little lesson. Anytime you revise something, look at those bigger issues first and then work your way down to the smaller errors. If you have done the pre-writing and really thought through the essay before you started to draft, then hopefully you won't really have any work to do at level 4 and maybe not even at level 3. You might be able to start at the paragraph level. That's why I always, encourage students to use those pre-writing techniques and really prepare yourself for the draft. It saves you a ton of work later down the road. Follow the order. If you have any questions about revising and editing, please feel free to let me know. But I really hope that you guys use this not only for the essays in my class, but any other kind of writing that you'll ever have to do, okay? Good luck.